Happy Sabbath, everyone. It's great to be here with you. You thought I was going to say prodigal son, didn't you? Well, today's about the Father. And the Son comes into it, but it's about the Father. My name's Matt Thompson, and my wife Heidi and Joshua and Alicia, my family. It's a great privilege to be with you. I've been pastoring in South Australia for the last 8 years, and we've moved up here just in January to be closer to family, a lot of family around here, and just to have a bit of a sabbatical for myself. And Heidi teaches at Macquarie College, where our kids go as well. So that's where we're at. We're attending Wall's End Church at the moment, and it's a great privilege to be able to share this time with you. Now I know it's put down as a sermon, but I like to think of it more as a teaching time and a sharing time. I personally like Sabbath school more than I like the sermon time. It's just me. It's my personal style, I guess. I like the discussion. I like the interaction. So I'm going to be brave today and try that with a new group. Who here thinks they can interact a bit with me? Do you think you can do it? Show the hands of those of you who are willing to be brave and interact. Can you do that? All right. With some of you, we'll get the rest along. We'll encourage you. We'll work it out. It'll be great. Luke 15 is the story we're looking at today. Now, understand the theme for the next 3 or 4 weeks is about vibrant Christianity. If you think of a Christian, you think of a Christian person you know. Do you know any Christian person in your life who you consider to be vibrant? Interaction opportunity number 1. Anybody know a Christian that they were considered to be vibrant? Would you be willing to risk naming them and telling me what is it about them that you think is vibrant? Oh, that got you. I saw some hands go up now. Oh, not so sure. Okay, here we go. Sorry, cameraman, I'm going to keep you busy.
Well, I think it's a good chance if Robin's not here for me to say that I think Robin's a very vibrant person. Hopefully she's not at the back hearing me. This is my wife. I'm amazed at the amount of energy that she has. She has been amazingly busy with her parents. Been difficulties. Some of our friends here will know, dealing with a sister. She's really trying very hard to be a very, very gracious Christian. She's got a passion for life, passion for Nepal. So I think my wife's a vibrant Christian.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much for that. That was awesome to hear. What makes a vibrant Christian? You know, I could stand up here and talk to you about how we can increase the vibrancy in our Christian experience by maybe praying better. Or I could stand up here and maybe we could share a bit how we could be better vibrant Christians by maybe spending more time with God. Or we could stand up here and say, hey, this will increase your vibrant Christian experience. Let me tell you how you can read the Bible better. Would these things help your Christian experience, do you think? It's not a trick question. Would these things help? They would, wouldn't they? But there's something far more important that's underneath our Christian experience, which we don't often think about, but which makes all the difference. And that is the view that we hold of the God who we're following. Have you ever stopped to think about what kind of picture do I hold of this Christ that is in the word Christian? What kind of picture do I hold of the God who I'm following? What kind of picture do I hold of the one who I'm supposed to be so vibrant about? And Luke 15 is the story we're going to be looking at today. Now, I want you to imagine, as you're considering that story, a married couple. we've just heard a great exchange here between a husband and his wife, which is beautiful. I want you to imagine a happy married couple. And everybody knows they're a happy married couple. I mean, you just see them walking to church and they're holding hands and they sort of look at each other with that soppy look. And you think, oh, these guys are in such love. It's wonderful. It's great. It's good to see. And they sit down together. And when you talk with them, they refer to each other so positively. Do you know couples like that? I hope we've got some around. Well, you and your wife, Craig, of course, naturally. Yeah. You know what I mean? When I talk about couples like this, you can think of a couple and think, yes, I can think of a couple exactly like that. They're just so in love, they're just so into each other that if I want to be married, I would want to be like them. Now, what do you think it is about their relationship? What do you think it is about their view of each other that makes the relationship work? It's love, isn't it? And a word that comes very close to it is trust. They trust each other implicitly. What would happen to this couple if maybe the wife somehow came across a rumour that her husband in a previous marriage was abusive? What do you think the wife would think about that? Now, for the sake of the story, the rumour's untrue, but what would she think? Let's say she obtains an email that was sent to her from her husband's last wife, claiming that he abused her when they were married. Now, she's had conversations with church members, people who go to the church that this ex-wife goes to, and they say, well, you've got to be careful about her opinion. She's actually a very critical, judgmental person herself. How would you feel if you had received that report about your husband? Would you believe it? Would you doubt? Would you not be sure of him anymore? Would you be trusting him 100% still? The trick, of course, is every other person she's talked to who's known her husband says he's an amazing guy. He's such an accepting guy, such a loving guy, such a warm guy. He's the kind of person who I'd love to have as my friend. What would you feel if you were the wife? You can't let go of this thought that maybe there's something about him that I cannot trust anymore. And you start looking at him differently. You've got those glasses on, except these are not good ones. You've got the glasses on where you're watching everything he does. Whereas before you enjoyed the times you spent together, now you're starting to wonder why he wants to be with you. Whereas before you enjoyed the hugs and the attention you had, all of a sudden you're thinking, why is he wanting to hug me? Why is he wanting to kiss me? Is there some ulterior motive that I should be worried about? She sees his loving interest in her affairs, which before she thought was, his attention to her. She now sees his loving interest as more control. Her picture is changing. Trust is disappearing. Now when people see them coming to church, they don't sit together as much. They're not holding hands anymore. They're not talking other than to criticize each other. The vibrancy of their relationship is disappearing. And why is that? Because the picture of one partner for her other partner is going down. So we could talk a lot about how we can be vibrant, but we can't go there until we work out in our minds, who is this God that I'm supposed to be so vibrant about? And what do I really believe about him? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Luke chapter 15. Now in this story, we have a father with two sons. And these two boys have very different takes on how they view their life. First, we're going to see the younger son. What does he think about his dad? He despises him, doesn't he? He heads off into a life of sin with full knowledge that he's rebelling. He suffers consequences, comes back in fear and trembling, discovers dad is not as bad as he thought, and then the party begins. In this story, we're going to see another son, the older one. He stays home, also not loving his father, but he's hiding it under a mask of obedience. He looks good on the outside, but is also living a life of selfishness. Although I would suggest that his is probably a bit more dark. Because while his younger brother simply abandons his father, this brother still pretends to obey him and to love him. But in his heart, he resents the double life he's led himself to lead. He expects some kind of self-centered reward for his duties. Doesn't get what he expects. And so when his wayward brother comes home and finds happiness for seemingly doing nothing right, he explodes and gets upset about it. Two brothers, two very different takes on life. How did they view their father? That's what made the difference. So we've got Luke 15 open. I want someone to read for us verse 1 and 2 of Luke chapter 15, and then I'll ask you a question about it. Can someone read for us Luke chapter 15, verses 1 to 2, and see why Jesus actually told this story to begin with? Let's go. Come on, be brave. Wow. Tax collectors, notorious sinners, coming to listen to Jesus teach. The Pharisees and other religious leaders, instead of being happy about it, are what? What emotion do you think they're feeling as they're watching Jesus spend time with these sinners? If you could pick an emotion, what would it be? Condescension. Is that an emotion? I'm not sure. Okay, yep, they're looking down on them. That's the attitude. Try and pick an emotion. I know we're not all emotional. Some of us are, some of us not. Let's pick a word. Maybe I need a list up there. Annoyed. Not bad. Okay. Yep, they're annoyed. Jealous of... not being chosen to be with Jesus. That's an interesting take on it. I hadn't thought of that one. Anything else? If you're a Pharisee and you see Jesus with these people who you consider to be pretty low, what emotions would come up? Disdain. Good. Getting a bit more intense now. Self-righteous. Let's jump forward a bit. We're talking about emotions that eventually lead these people to kill Jesus. So let's up the pressure a bit. What kind of emotions are we talking about? Sorry? Terrorism. Terror might be emotion possibly. What else? Heat. Oh, hate. Yeah. Hate. Anger. Hate and anger are the big ones in this particular story. He was associating with sinful people, even eating with them. It is because of this attitude that Jesus decides to tell this story. The Pharisees are mad. If you were one of these sinners, would you think the Pharisees were mad with you? If you were sitting there with Jesus, eating with him, and the Pharisees were looking in and they looked mad, would you imagine that they'll be mad with you? You would, wouldn't you? Who would they really be mad with? They're really mad with Jesus, aren't they? Not so much the sinners, but who's suffering because of it? The sinners are, because they're the ones who think they're the ones who think they're in trouble. There's another story in John chapter 9 where you see a blind man. And the disciples and Jesus come up to this blind man and they look at him. Instead of saying, oh, poor guy, he's blind, the disciples turn around and ask Jesus a question. Jesus, tell me, what reason is there this man is born blind? Whose fault was it? Was it his fault or was it his parents' fault? What are they implying by that? What picture do they have of God when they're asking this question? God looks at this man who makes a mistake or his parents make a mistake. Instead of having a forgiving heart, God has a heart of what? Vengeance. And he responds to that vengeance by what? Doing what to the man? By making him blind. So the man wasn't just blind because it's bad luck. He's blind because God punished him. God was angry with him. God was upset with him, so God made him blind. This is the kind of view of God that Jesus was having to struggle with. Whose fault is it? It's God. It's obviously your fault, and God is the one instigating it. These sinners, well, God obviously would judge them too, wouldn't he? Jesus has a point to make about that. Verse 11 and 12. Jesus tells them a story. Luke chapter 15. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of your estate now before you die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. They're angry. The Pharisees are angry at what Jesus is doing. Does their anger lead them to do something constructive? Or does their anger lead to something destructive? Which is it? If you were the Pharisees and you were angry because these sinners were being getting attention from Jesus, where do you think that anger would lead you? What would you do with that anger in terms of these people? Thinking about, when was the last time you were angry with somebody? Did that anger lead you to do something useful for them, or to help them, or to build them up, or to heal them?
Obviously, there's a lot of history between probably the time that Jesus and the Pharisees.
No doubt.
So that's to be taken
Mm-hmm.
into account as to the degree of anger I see.
Mm-hmm.
They had control of the religious life in that community.
Mm-hmm.
So I perceive those Pharisees as seeing that they may be losing that religious control of Jesus. And that's causing their anger.
Losing control leads them to anger. So control's an issue for them. Is control a self-centered thing, or is control a others-focused thing? It's a selfish thing, isn't it? Control is something where I have power over you. Very good analysis of the situation. So they're upset because they're losing control. But in getting angry about that, who suffers? Who suffers the most?
Like most situations in conflict where wars that are going on, it's just the everyday people
Mm-hmm.
that are being controlled by their leaders.
Yeah. In their anger, they're lashing out against against those who are incapable of defending themselves. So while they're the ones upset, they're the ones angry, they're the ones losing the control, instead of dealing with it with Jesus, they lash out at those who can't help themselves, and they feel judged for it. So it seems like the picture of God is one of being a mad God, because if I were him, I would be. Not because God is mad, not because God is angry, but because if I were in his position, I would want to be angry. And because I would want to be angry if I were him, I'm going to make sure he, in my book, is angry for me. So when they look at somebody who's upsetting them, making them uncomfortable, these sinners, for example, they say, you make me uncomfortable? No, they don't say that. They say, God is angry with you. Not willing to say, you're making me uncomfortable, but God's the one angry with you. So what do these people think of God from now on? Oh, he's angry with me. Therefore, I'm probably not worth anything to him. Is the father mad? Is the father destructive? Or is the father maybe sad instead? Read on in our story. The father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. The father could have gotten angry with him. The father could have gone to his son and said, you rotten son, you've offended me, I'm going to punish you for that. But he doesn't. Because the father doesn't operate on the basis of anger. The father doesn't operate on the basis of selfishness. The father operates on the basis of a four-letter word starting with L, ending with E. It's love. And by the way, love is a word you can never get tired of. I hope we don't. Because in God's book, love is a powerful thing. Instead of being mad, the father is sad instead. He's sad for his son. He's not mad because he's been offended. And because he's sad of where his son's going to go, he has to let him go. Does Jesus get angry ever, by the way? Okay. Give me an example. Okay, in the temple. Go home and... sorry, I'll have a drink in a minute. Go home and check your Bibles. I'll give you maybe $5. It's worth a shot. I'll give you $5 if you can find there the word angry. Jesus is angry, or Jesus has anger in that story. We assume he's angry because he does some pretty confronting things. But interestingly enough, the Bible doesn't actually say that Jesus was angry with the people. And it's an interesting point too, that when Jesus clears the temple, it says that children come in, the sick come in. And what does Jesus do with them? He heals them. Human anger, if I walked into the temple, or if I walked into church, if I'm willing to step out on a limb here, if I walked into church and said, my goodness, this is not the way I want church, this is not the way I'd imagine God would want his church to be, I'm angry about this. In my human anger, what am I likely to do? to the people around me who are, I think, at fault? What am I likely to do to them if I'm a human and I'm getting angry? Speak to them sharply, pull out the proverbial sword, knock their head off. This is the kind of thing I'm going to do. I'm going to destroy the people. However, Jesus' anger is different. He is angry for the sake of the fact that his father, he's got a very bad picture in here. Imagine being a poor person coming to church. You've been told you have to sacrifice the animal for God to accept you. So you come to church, you can't afford the animal. There's a place to buy it there right at the front door. You've got to get the animal at that door. And you think, okay, I can't pay for the lamb. I'll have to pay for a dove. It's cheaper. But instead of just paying what you're supposed to pay, the person's there saying, well, you need to pay this much because they're trying to rip you off. And you get angry with them. You get upset and say, that's not fair. This is how much it should be. No, this is how much you've got to pay. If you can't deal with it, well, go away. But you can't go away because you want to sacrifice to God because that's the only way you think he's going to accept you. How do you think about God when you've lost all the money that you've worked hard for? That's more than what you should have paid for. You've gone into church with a bad taste in your mouth. You're worshipping God, giving him this animal which you think this is unjust. You leave church, walk through the market again, seeing them do it to everybody else. What's your view of God when you go home? God, you're unjust. It's not fair. So you can see why Jesus was angry. He's angry because the picture of God was, if indeed he was angry, the picture of God was wrong. But his type of anger led to healing. His type of anger led to rebuilding people, not like our type of anger, which is really, really destructive. Any other examples? Let's think of one example and then we'll move on. Mark chapter 3, 1-6. Let's quickly have a look at that. Mark chapter 3, verse 1-6. Another example where Jesus gets angry. What does his anger lead to, though? That's the question. Okay. Who wants to read this one for us? Mark 3, 1-6. Jesus goes into a synagogue, and what happens? Any volunteers? What was Jesus angry about, Grant? Was he angry because the Pharisees offended him? Is he upset because they did something that he wouldn't do? Is that why he was angry? Because they had offended him? Or is there another reason? He was angry because who was suffering? This man who is sick, unwell, he's crippled, isn't he? And he's probably crippled because God cursed him. Let's put that into the story. And these religious leaders who represent God have brought him in here not to bring him to worship, not to bring him before God and say, God cares for you, but they bring him in as a pawn to trap God of all people. They didn't even know him. Can you see the horrendous evil in the story? This man is sitting in the middle going, I don't know what to think of God right now. This is a mess. Jesus is angry. He's not angry because he's offended. He's angry because this man has been fed a lie. And he's going to change it. But what does Jesus' anger lead to? Does he sit there and go, you Pharisees, you rotten guys, you're out of here? He doesn't. He instead is angry, which leads him to being sad, which leads him to what does he do? What does he actually do with his anger? Grant read it. What does he do? He heals. He heals the man. I wonder if the man's picture of God changed after that. I'm sure it did. Okay. I want us to get us in little groups of 4, roughly. So I know pews aren't easy for this kind of thing, but I'm sure we can manage. Turn around if you need to. Get in groups of 4. I'm going to ask you some questions, a question for your group, if you don't mind. Now, maybe somewhere down the middle to the left, when you get your group, I want you to put your hands up when you get your group together. You've got 15 seconds. I want the groups on this side, you're going to answer this particular question I'm going to ask. And the groups, where are we? Somewhere here. The groups on that side, I'm going to ask you another question. Okay. Oh, I've got little handouts for you, so that'll help. Okay. There's your question. Is your group ready yet? Take a question. Okay. You ready? Take a question. One more over this side. Take a question. Okay. Now, any ready on the other side yet? I should get a deacon to help me, shouldn't I? All right. And where's the other one? Okay. This side, any groups ready? Yes. You don't have to move, aren't you lucky? Group. Grab one. Grab one. Grab one. Grab one. Any more groups here? You guys a group? No, back row. I'll give you a question anyway. Okay, we all got one? Read the question out. I'll give you a couple of minutes to discuss it. Now, I'm not going to get the answers from the front, but I just want you to discuss it and work it out amongst yourselves. Okay, I'll give you 1 minute. Okay, it's not a minute, but we'll stop anyway. I'm going to go over time. Well, your view of God will affect how you interact with other people, won't it? I think you guys over here, did you have the one about the angry God? Was it yours? Yeah, the other one. So you view God as others-focused, loving God who's grieved when you sin. With that picture of God, with what emotion might you react to someone who has gossiped about you behind your back, and what would you do? You guys had the negative God, the angry God. How would you react if someone wronged you? Yeah. Well, I hope you got some interesting thoughts out of that one. A mad God would lead to destroying people. A sad God, I hope, would lead instead to ultimately reconciling and healing people. A mad God becomes a herder. I don't know if that's a word, but I made it up. Maybe a punisher is another word. Verses 13 to 20 of our story, Luke 15. verses 13 to 20. A few days later, the younger son packs up his belongings, moves to a distant land. There he wastes all his money in wild living. About this time, his money ran out. A great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his fields to feed his pigs. The younger man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, "At home even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, 'Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you. I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant.'" So he returned home to his father. Now his father has been wronged. His son has insulted him, made him look bad in front of his friends. If he was a mad father, a father who was easily offended and felt that he needed some sense of, what would you say, blood offering maybe, or some sense of punishment to make him personally calm down and feel better, if that were the kind of father he was, when he saw his son walking back down the road, how would he have reacted? How would you have reacted if you were that kind of a father? What would you have done? Okay. Give me a pose. Give me a posture, Gwen. Stand up and show me. Whoa, man. I think she's used that before. I could say. What I do, Grandma? I'm sorry, I won't do it again. Any other posture? Somebody else might be a bit more active than that. Think about it. If your son's offended you, in Deuteronomy, there was even the option given that if you had a wayward son who was rebellious, you could take him out and stone him. It's there. Now, we don't have time to talk about the Old Testament God so much. I'd love to. That's another time. It was there. So he's offended you, he's left, you've got all this time to stew on it. Has someone offended you and you've felt really upset by it? Instead of dealing with it, you've just stewed on it? How long does it take for it to build and build and build and build and become the overwhelming thing in your life? Now you see him coming down. All the pressure's in you. You've got to let it out. What's going to happen? There comes that ratbag son of mine. I'm going to kill him. And I'm not joking. I'm going to kill that boy. That's the kind of reaction you would have if that's the kind of father you were. You're gone, mate. You're finished. In Luke chapter 9, verse 54 onwards, you see an interesting story where Jesus comes to a series of towns and he wants to share the good news with them, and they look at him and say, "Get out of here. We don't want your story. We don't want your stuff. Get out of here." The disciples are offended by that. They don't want to hear you. You're the Messiah. Well, too bad for them. Lord, let us call down fire on them. Can we please call down fire on them? Why do you think they want the fire called down? Is that maybe to sort of teach the guys a lesson and maybe help them do better next time? Is a fire a fairly final thing? If you call down fire on a place, are you likely to go, "Oh, that hurt. I'll be good next time"? Or you're gone. You're finished, aren't you? See, an angry person responds with punishment, finished. Who feels better? The people who have rejected Jesus? Are they feeling better? They're dead. Who's feeling better about it? Anyone? Well, the one who called the fire down probably feels pretty good for a short while, but that's about it. And someone has been destroyed in the meantime. God is not the kind of God who's out to hurt us. We see in the story, while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming, filled with rage. No, it doesn't say that. Filled with a desire to punish. It doesn't say that. It says filled with what? Compassion. Any other word your Bible has? Filled with love. Filled with compassion. Compassion, love. These are other focused words. I'm caring about you. I'm worried about you. I want to heal you. So I'm going to go down to you where you are. I'm not going to wait for you to come to me and grovel at my feet and I say, "Well, yeah, I'm feeling a little bit better, but can you do this as well? Can you do that? Maybe I'll whip you. That'll make me feel better as well." No, he runs down to the Son because the Son is his concern. The Son is the one he loves. The Son is the one he wants to restore. This is the kind of God we worship. Not a God who is out to hurt, but a God who is out to heal. Not the kind of God who says, obey me or I'll kill you, obey me or I'll punish you, but son, you've been out there, you've suffered immensely. By the way, who made the son suffer? Was it the Father? Who made the son suffer? The son suffered himself. He suffered the consequences of his own actions. So it's the son's gone out there, he's intentionally caught a virus, he's sort of injected himself with AIDS, let's say, because he said, I want to give this a go. He suffered the effects of that. He's limping back home with the consequences of this. He's sore, he's in pain, he's in agony. He knows he's stuffed up. He's walking back thinking, man, if I were my father, here we go again, if I were my father, I wouldn't accept me. So because I wouldn't do that if I were him, he probably won't. So therefore, Father, at least make me a servant or a slave so I can somehow pay my way back. The son is shocked and surprised when his father, instead of saying, yep, you've got some work to do, he runs down to him and says, son, you're still my son. Son, I still love you. Son, I still have compassion for you. I'm not out to get you. I'm not out to punish you. I want to heal you. You got to be kidding. Heal me? I wouldn't do it. Yes, but I'm not you. Did you hear that? God is not you. God is not me. Because if he were, I'd be gone a long time ago. And so would you. God is not me. God is not you. One quick question. When did the Father forgive the Son? Anyone want to volunteer a solution to that question? Did the Father forgive him? Let's see. Did the Father forgive him after he confessed his sin and offered to pay for it? Did the Father maybe forgive him when he saw him coming down the road? Did the Father forgive him when he left? Give me a place. Where in the story do you think the Father forgave the Son? Before it was asked. Okay, let's just clarify forgiveness. Who wants to risk a definition for forgiveness for me? What's forgiveness doing for me? When I'm saying I'm forgiving something, what am I releasing? I'm releasing my right to punish. That's awesome. Keep going. Free of what? Okay. Free of guilt. Mm-hmm. You're releasing that person's hold on you, because they've got a hold on you, don't they? That person who's wronged you has suddenly got a grip on you. So you're free of that. You're letting go of the responsibility of punishing that person. You got one more, Craig? Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. So the Father forgave the Son when? Thank you. Is there ever a time when he didn't have forgiveness for him? That is exactly right, Craig. Awesome. Was there ever a time the Father said, that son is gone and I'm going to struggle to forgive him, but I'll do it sometime? There's never ever a time where the Father is not in a forgiving spirit, because God is love, and that's what love does all the time, every time. God is a healer. The Father is a healer. When Jesus was on the cross, did he have the right to condemn the people who were hammering those nails into his hands? Who says he had, he said he had the right by whose standard? By God's standard, did he have the right? It wasn't even an issue in God's eyes. He never had the right, because in God's eyes, we are his focus. Every time, all the time. That's why he went to that cross. By our standards, he had the right, because we operate on a standard of, if you make a mistake, if you break the law, if you cross me, I'll punish you. That's what we do. God operates by a different standard. Thank God for that. He doesn't say, if you go wrong, I'm going to punish you. He says, if you go wrong, I'm going to heal you. See the difference? We punish. the Father heals. We get mad because someone crosses us and upsets us. The Father gets sad because he knows we're going to get hurt. And not by him, but by what we've done. So the Father says, I love you, I want to heal you. I'll always forgive you. The question is, are we going to accept it? Because if we don't accept it, we can't enjoy the power of the transformation that will bring to our lives. Lastly, so when God is mad, he becomes a herder. When God is sad, he becomes a healer. And I've got a choice here. I can serve him as my slave master, or I can accept him as my father. Almost done. The older son saw the father as his slave master. Let's finish the story. Verse 25. The older son was in the fields working. When he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house. Well, it must have been a great time. And he asked one of the servants what was going on. Your brother is back, he was told. Your father has killed a fatted calf. We are celebrating because of his safe return. Awesome. Not. The older brother was what? We all know where this anger is going to lead, don't we? The older brother was angry, and what was the result of his anger? He refused to go in. His father, if his father was a punisher, he'd be thinking, oh great, now my older son is ripping me off. I'm not going out to him. If he wants to stay there and sulk, he can. That's his issue. I'm quite happy. I'm having a good time with my other son. I'm having an awesome time. I'm going to leave him alone. He can stew in that. No, he doesn't do that, because the father who wants to heal his younger son also wants to heal the older one. So the father who's run down to his younger son, what does he do to the older one? He steps out and he walks out to him. He doesn't deserve it, but by our standards, but that's what he does. He comes out, and what does he do with him? What does your Bible say? His father comes out and what? Pleads with him. Another word. Give me another word. What other words do we have? Pleads isn't the only version we've got here, is it? Entreated him, not bad. Any other words we've missed? Begged. He's begging him. The father is begging his son, who should know better, son, please, come in, reconcile with your brother. He says, no way. All these years I've slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to. In all that time, you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours, not my brother, by the way, I've already disowned him. Ouch. And when this son of yours comes back, after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. You've got to be kidding. All these years, I have slaved for you. How does the father feel about that? Slave? You're my son? And you see me as like your slave master? Oh, that would kill him, wouldn't that? Would hurt. I love you, and you see me as a slave? Slave? You've got to be... No. All that time, he never gave me even one young goat. Slaves are driven by self-preservation, by rewards and punishment. Slaves have a desire to survive, but not to enter into any intimate relationships. The older son had done everything he was told, but his heart was untouched. Because he viewed his father as a master, his heart simply started to resent him. In his heart, he thought that if he were God, he would find himself repulsive. If he were God, he would burden him with jobs that were designed to make him acceptable. So, as a slave, he accepts these chores from his imagined God, who is angry with him, and himself grew angry with the God that he had made up. How did this resentment and anger at his make-believe father affect his life? Was it vibrant? Was it joyful? No. It robbed his life of the joy and peace that only comes when you realize your father is accepting, loving, and compassionate. With the resentment that he had against his imaginary father came the poisonous thought that his father actually owed him for his hard work and his labor. So when his brother turns up, pays no price, and gets embraced instead of condemned, what does he do? He gets angry. That boy deserves nothing. I am owed. Pay me, Father. If you don't pay me, I'm going to pay him out. And someone ends up suffering. Can you see how your picture of God will determine how you live your life? Can you see how your picture of God will decide how you relate to other people? Can you see how your picture of God will decide whether or not you have joy and peace? Your picture of God makes all the difference. So what kind of God do you serve? Father finishes, look to your son, verse 31. You've always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day, for your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he's found. Everything I have is yours. Everything I have is yours. Before we concentrate on the tough issue of how we relate to each other, we have to solve one big question first. How do I relate to this God that I serve? And is he indeed the God that he says he is, or is he some made-up God that I've made up him to be? Everything I have is yours. What does God have for us that we can get? What does God want us to have? Ever heard of the fruits of the Spirit? Love, joy, peace, these things? These are the things that God says are yours if you want them. They're mine if I want them. Accept them. Because if I don't, then I'm going to have a hell of a lot of trouble dealing with people. It won't work. Why be nice to other people? Why look out for them? Why say, I forgive you, when they're in my face saying, you are the worst person in the world? How can I respond to that by saying, I forgive you? How can I respond to that by saying, I love you? How can I respond to that by saying, man, I want to heal you in some way? If the God I'm serving is one who, when he gets offended, will punish me. If my God is punishing me, what am I going to do? You can guarantee I'll be punishing everyone around me too. But if my God is a forgiving God, if my God is a healing God, if my God is a God who says, I love you, I want you to be safe, I want you to have a relationship with me, then you will respond to others in the same way. Love God first. Work that out. Then you'll have less trouble loving others. Your picture of God makes all the difference. And if you're not sure who this God is, look to Jesus. The final thought I want to leave in your minds is something that Jesus says in John 1 verse 18. No one has seen the Father. No one. But the Son has come to make him known. If you want to know what God looks like, if you want to know how Jesus acts, if you want to know how God acts, if you want to know what God thinks of you, look to Jesus. And as soon as you understand what he thinks about you, as soon as you get that revelation, then go and do likewise. Know Jesus. That's the secret to a vibrant Christian experience. Okay. Are we pray now or later? Let's sing a song. Sing a song. Good idea.